your host, Sophia. And my guest today is Cienia Railey. Now, Cienia is a travel business owner and entrepreneur. Welcome. So glad you're
Thank you.
here today.
Yes, thank you for having me. So happy that you invited me.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm so ready to hear all about you and introduce you to the audience because as travel and transformation, travel is already in the title. So we got to talk about some travel. But there's also there's also the other side of travel that sometimes people don't think about. It's like, yeah, travel's all about I get to destination and sometimes it's yeah, I like to book it myself and sometimes it's like I would travel but I don't want to do the work.
Right.
You have a whole host of us, travel advisors, travel business owners, who can help you with that. So, one thing, I just want to be transparent
Mhm.
because Cindy and I work with the same host agency. In fact, she's the one who introduced me to the business because she posted something about was it? She posted something about Puerto Rico, and I was about to go to Puerto Rico. So I'm like, okay, let me ask her some questions. I need to know. 'Cause I was a book it yourself person. I like to plan, I like to do all that stuff. And now, not only do I like to do that for other people, but I also like the business side of things. So let me just ask you to tell us how you got started.
Wow, it's been 10 years now. So, great question, Sophia. I got started in this business actually through a coworker. It was so very unexpected. I'm a mom of two, a single mom, and I was working in healthcare as a claims analyst. And I was really looking for ways to create additional income because I was not really comfortable with where I was at financially and the limitations because of that. And so, what happened was actually another travel advisor walked up to me and was sharing her card, telling me that she could book my travel. I didn't tell her I wasn't traveling. I said I'll take her card and keep her in mind. And then before she walked away, she said, and if you know anyone who's looking to make some additional income, you could refer them to me. And so at that point, I knew a great person. That was me. So I told her I was interested in, finding out a little bit about what it is that she had to offer. And she shared, this video with me that talked about, all of the value and benefits that come along with becoming a travel business owner. And it was for me right up my alley because that was something that I'm not a salesperson. I didn't want to sell a product or anything like that, but I wanted to provide experiences. And I also wanted to travel more myself. So I was really interested and dipping my toe in the travel industry. And that's how I got here today through a coworker.
And it can be so easy and yet not.
Right. That is so true.
Because sometimes okay, so people who listen to me every week would not think, oh, this woman must be an introvert. But I am. I'm an introvert with um, extroverted tendencies. So, but as an introvert, it's not always easy to go talk to people and tell them what you're doing, even when
Right.
it's a benefit to them. So, what was your experience
Mhm.
actually starting and talking to people?
Wow. So that is so funny that you say that because I too am an introvert and people don't think that I am an introvert because yes, I can get into a room with people and I can be an extrovert, I can be personable, I can have conversations, but I truly enjoy alone time. I truly enjoy being with myself, right? Big solo traveler as well. And so you asked what is that experience like as an introvert, being able to run a business, a successful business. And honestly, it's really about discipline. right? Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it's really just about having the discipline to do the activities that are necessary, not necessarily that you desire to do, right? And so there, I find myself so many times, Sophie, I've been on planes and I'm the girl that's going to get that window seat. I'm going to sit in the corner. I'm going to put my headphones on and I'm going to be in my phone, or be in a book, and so I had to tell myself at times, Cienia, sometimes people are actually trying to engage with me. And in my mind, I'm like, just trying to be over here alone. But I often have to speak to myself and just tell myself, you know what, although that is not what you desire to always do, it is necessary because not just for the benefit of my business, but to also one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to really be a positive impact on people. And that was a conversation that I had with God a long time ago, especially at my lowest points, I just wanted him to use me for his glory. And so how can you ask of that and you're scared to talk to people? That's exactly what he's gonna do. He's gonna put you on Front Street. And sometimes we don't know what we're asking for. So I would just say it's really the discipline factor that comes in when you are an introvert or an extrovert and you have to step outside that comfort zone.
Well, it's so funny because you just described me on a plane. I have my noise cancellation headphones. If it's a long haul flight, I'm plugging in and seeing
That's
home
right.
things that I have not been able to watch throughout time, or I have my book. So yes, I
What
so
we do.
I so get that because that is so me. I in fact, I remember what flight I was on. I had the headphones on. I had the book in that hand, and this is before I was actually selling anything or be an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
I just wanted to read my book, and the book beside me not stop talking. It's like I got on noise cancellation. I can't hear you. I just see your mouth moving and you keep touching me.
Yes.
So eventually, I had to put down the book, take off my headphones, and I ain't gonna lie, I was so perturbed because I looked at this as time for me
Mhm.
to indulge in reading because at the time I was working a full-time job
Mhm.
and, coming home tired, not necessarily because I physically exerted myself, but I was
Right.
mentally exhausted.
Right.
So I didn't really make time for myself to read and do things like that. So this was like my little self-care pocket.
Yes.
And her husband must have been the happiest camper ever because she wasn't bothering him.
Exactly. I have a story about that too because I remember sitting on the plane and at this point I had stopped reading my book and I said, there's a little game that I play, a Sudoku or something to get my mind going. And this little boy was sitting next to me. He was in the middle and his mom was at the end. And next thing you know, I just see his face coming to my peripheral. And he's like, "What are you playing?" And, I'm just and because I live in Orlando, so, anytime I'm on a plane coming or going, there are children on the plane. That's one of the reasons why I have my, cancellations and because, hey, we're gonna have a few babies crying. And so I remember thinking to myself, I just want to just same thing, relax, woosah, sit with my thoughts. And then I looked over and I said, you know what? I started talking to little boy and I realized his mom needed it. She slept like a baby. She was pregnant. He told me all her business, right? How he was expecting a little sister. And we just chatted. And, we had a great time when she woke up. I said, "Can we take a picture together?" And I actually took a picture and I posted about that experience on the plane. Like, here's Austin. I knew everything about him. And you know what? It's just in those moments, it just really shows you that um once again, I go back to how God is using you. Even though we don't necessarily want to do it in that moment, you don't know that she might have needed that conversation
Yeah,
or he may have needed that conversation and she needed her rest. So, sometimes it's a sacrifice, but it's worth it.
it is. His like I said, that man, he's a happy camper. And what I realized too is that she has flight anxiety.
Mm,
So me actually paying attention to her was what she needed in that
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
And just
yeah,
like you said, sometimes you have a mission.
yeah,
It's like, here's your mission if you choose to accept it.
yeah,
And sometimes you choose to accept it and sometimes you don't.
yes.
But, I chose to accept the mission, set it on fire, and let it go.
And you know what, Sophia? That's a big deal when it comes to, as we're speaking about just entrepreneurship. It's a mission, and sometimes you don't necessarily want to take the mission, right? I think when people think about entrepreneurship, or being a business owner, there are so many great things that they think about, right? Being able to have the freedom, not having to answer to anyone, but that just correlates to it as well. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily want to do, right? Or we see the glory, but you don't know the story, the behind the scenes of what you have to do that you don't want to do in order to have what you truly desire. And so, yeah, the mission is not always something that we want to take on, but it's needed.
Exactly. So I think that's a good segue right there into what identity shift did you need to make to step out of your career in health and be an entrepreneur? Like, what mindset shifts did you have to make? And I know I'm asking a lot of questions at the same time, so take your time as
Okay.
you answer. But what, if you can remember, were some of the steps that you took to really regulate your mindset and step into future self? Because you had that vision of who she was, and now it's like, there's a part of you that has become that vision,
Mhm.
and I'm sure there's a part of you who has a new vision.
Yes. Yes, yes. That's a great question. And you know what? I often think about that. To be honest, I always go back to what sets me apart or what sets us apart, right, as entrepreneurs. And I will say corporate America played a big role, honestly. As much as that was what I was running from, it really taught me structure. It really taught me discipline, because it taught me accountability, right? Because as much as I couldn't stand sometimes, and I'm a strong-minded, I'm what I would call an A personality, an alpha personality. So I found myself, in corporate America, I'm a person I ask a lot of questions, right? And some people look at it as being challenged, right? Especially when you are questioning an authority figure, right? Your manager, your supervisor. And I more so were asking questions because I wanted to gain an understanding to be able to execute more efficiently and effectively. But what I can say is the shift, man, that's a good one. So if I could tell a little story, when I first started this business, I was still working full time at my job. I had no idea that I was going to actually be able to use this business to walk away from my job. And so what I did was I just started to mirror what I did in corporate America with my business, right? Just like we have designated hours for our business, your spouse can't call, your children can't call unless it's an emergency, your friends can't call. Gave that same dedication to my business. So when I got off of at my lunch break, I would make that my business hours. And there were specific things that I needed to tackle in order to get it done because that was the same mindset that I had in my job. I wanted to be a high achiever, an overachiever. I wanted to get it done. I was goal oriented, had to finish my projects. And so I said, I'm going to bring that same energy, that same enthusiasm, that same discipline to my business. And to be honest, Sophia, a lot of people don't understand that that's exactly what you need to run a successful business. But what usually happens is, because there's nobody holding you accountable but you, right? You don't come if you come late to work, there's some type of citation violation, something that's going to happen, some type of consequence, right? Calling out, right? We're not going to do it as much because we know that there's a consequence. But when you're your own boss and there's nobody who is going to say, hey, Cinia, you should have been here, or no, you have to be here, or whatever it may be, you have to be that voice. And so I said to myself, the same way that I'm not going to call out of work is the same way that I'm not going to call off when it comes to my business. I'm going to dedicate the same time that I could have I invested into growing someone else's vision to growing mine, you know? And I would also say a lot of personal development. I needed to that correlation. And so when I came into this business, personal development, I would say mindset training was a big thing. You know, I was a reader when I was younger, but I had gotten away from it. Like you say, you know, sometimes we just get so busy, busy, busy that, you know, we just don't find the time to pour into ourselves. And once I got into the business, it really helped me understand that number one, I had to get around different people. Some of these individuals who were intimidating to me because I felt like we couldn't relate. You know, sometimes we look at individuals with a high level of success and we think that they're truly different from us and they really are not, right? And so when I got around individuals and surrounded myself with individuals who were just speaking life, success, positivity, that was another thing. We're not going to dwell on the negative, we're going to dwell on the positive, you know, and that was the mindset shift that I had to make where I had to say, find the blessing in every lesson. Right. Some things are gonna take place, and oh my gosh, it's gonna be so frustrating, and I was talking to you about one of those frustrating moments right before we hopped on here, right? But in that, I say, "Hey, what's the lesson? You know, what can I take from this? What can I get from this? What can I use? What can I apply?" And so it really is about evolving and transformation and a continuous transformation of your mindset and continuously identifying those things. And I would say that make you uncomfortable and tackling them anyway. This is uncomfortable for me right now, being on the on this podcast, right, in front of people. But I also I say to myself, and one last thing that I'm gonna say before I go and turn it back over to you is when I first got this information from my coworker, remember I did say that I wanted it, and when I got it, I saw the value. Everything sounded great, but the warfare started to take place in my mind, right? Will people take me seriously? Will I be good? People already know my some people knew my current situation and I wasn't doing that great. I mean, I was okay. I'm not going to say I was, you know, terrible, but for me. And so there was so many things, so much doubt that I was allowing to creep in my mind. And plain as day, as I was sitting in that cubicle warfare, and God said to me, "So you're going to deny it because it comes in the form that you least expected." And man, Sophia, that blew my mind because how many times are we praying and asking God for things? And I was asking him, trusting in him to increase my income, to enlarge my territory. I trusted in him to make the provision. You know what I need. I trusted you to supply it, right? And so, but here I was thinking about a job in configuration. I worked in claims and configuration, you know, it was just you got paid more. I can see the vision, but here he was promoting me out of corporate America altogether with this business opportunity.
Right.
8 streams of income. That's what I was asking for, right? Income. They presented 8 streams and I was still doubtful. And so I told myself from that day, that was like the epiphany for me that even if it scares you, it's more than likely what you need, right? Because anything worth having, whether you're going to move out of your hometown to a different state or country, whether you're going to get married, whether you're going to have kids, whether you're going to start a business, anything that's big and major is going to make you nervous. It's unfamiliar, it's a new journey. You know, we fear failure, but realizing that the only way that I could fail in that moment, what it taught me was that the only way that I could fail is if I never try, if I never continue to do what I needed to do. And so the transition for me was that there's no such thing as failure. I just had to keep going. And even when I had those hiccups, I had to say, okay, identify, learn from it, and apply, you know. And so that was the transition, really more so was the mindset of there is a conversation that you need to have with yourself before you step into entrepreneurship to prepare you for what is to come. And so and then you will continuously have with yourself, but you do actually have to be surrounded with other individuals who can help you when you find yourself in those places where it's not, I want to say dark, but you're not shining bright. And there's potential to shine brighter. And I also needed people who could identify some of those gifts within me that I couldn't even see.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think that is such a I'm so glad you brought that up because there's so many for me, there's so many facets to who I am and what I do. And one of
Right.
the things I do is that I coach as single, highly highly successful. Well,
Mhm.
okay, highly successful, I guess, is subjective, but
Mhm.
high achieving women,
Right.
professional women
Right.
who, regardless of your profession, you carry yourself in a certain way, right?
Right.
And a lot of the women that I coach, they don't have kids.
Mhm.
So just talking about the things that the gifts that you don't see.
Mhm.
And there are also beliefs that you might not see because
Right.
all that stuff lives in your blind spot.
Mhm.
And it's because it's normal.
Right.
It's conditioning. It's, early childhood experiences. It's early adult experiences. It's today's and yesterday's experiences, and they all build on each other, but they're patterns.
Right.
So, what you're talking about, having support and being around people who can bring that out in you,
Mhm.
sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's like really lonely because you
Yeah.
should be in all these different communities, but
Yes.
if it's not like in your face communities online, and sometimes it's not easy to
Mhm.
get there. Some
Yes.
people are amazing at making connections online. I don't happen to be one of them yet. Just saying. But
Mhm.
but keyword is yet.
Yes. Yes.
I have in person so much easier for me. But that again, that's something that I noticed that now I have somebody who's helping me work on that. So sometimes we all just need a little help. And
Yeah.
whether that is the community you're in, making sure that you're with like minded people, or it's hiring a coach, or it's within whatever business you're in, getting a mentor,
Right.
all of those things are going to help lead you to success because your blind spots are going to show up. Your triggers are definitely going to show up. That's where I don't
Mhm.
like entrepreneurship to make a trigger show up.
Those relationships are definitely key, Sophia. I would definitely say relationships. And I think in life, we have learned to do it ourselves, right? If it's they're even say in this in my business, if it's gonna be, it's up to me, right? And it is up to you. There is a level of responsibility, absolutely, that you have to be a self starter. But those relationships, oh my gosh, those are key. I mean, that's what really brings value. People think it's the money, but it's the relationships because I have a wealth, even the wealth of knowledge that has been poured into me as an entrepreneur, the people that I get to meet. I just went to a barbecue for the 4th of July and sat with 2 amazing women, with amazing stories, and now that's a new connection. One is an attorney, one is an entrepreneur in the, cosmetology field, and so I have learned now that, instead of isolating, which was a thing for me, right? Just not really always being trusting, like you said, things that happen in your past can shape and mold you in that way. I now learn that that is the plot of the devil. Honestly, when they say to kill, steal, and destroy, to separate, right? But collaboration is it. I learned that now, that unity, being together, being able to work together. And this is why, if you look at the world, sometimes there's so much division. That's just the devil working his magic. If we learn how to get together, we're going to be so much stronger in numbers. And so those authentic relationships really are what brings value, to any situation.
I agree. And relationships across the board, but I also think relationships between women, because sometimes women can be women's worst enemies.
Hmm.
And just in the way that we speak about each other, the way we judge each other, um, instead of taking the collaborative approach and building each other up.
Mhm.
And it's like each one teach one.
Right.
You know, I think all of these things always sound good coming out of somebody's mouth, but in
Right.
practice, what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? And so I just invite everybody who's listening, find a woman who you don't really talk to that much or you don't really know very well. And instead of judging her or talking about her, go get to know her.
Mhm.
Because I think once we start doing that and we start coming together that way, we can improve not only our own personal situations, but we're building each other up. So we're building everybody's situation
Right.
as we do that. And then we're kind of, and I know this is like so Pollyanna, but then when you do that, you're kind of creating your own little utopia
Right.
because you're around the people who will help you evolve.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree. I totally agree. And you said something with that, uh, even in that, I had to not judge, like I mentioned, just feeling a little bit inadequate, a little intimidated when I came around individuals, women and men who were at a higher, maybe what I would say status, tax bracket, and you just make all of these assumptions, the way that they carry themselves. It was just so different from what I was used to being around. And when I really decided to take the time and say, you know what, I'm not going to judge or prejudge, or insinuate, I'm going to really take the time to just dive in and have a conversation. Oh my gosh. You ever have that situation when you're younger, the person that you dislike the most becomes your best friend, because y'all are so similar in so many ways. It's like one of those things. And I realized, you know what? Don't like they say, don't ever judge a book by its cover. Give people grace, give them the opportunity to really be able to show you who they are and not just you create a narrative based off of what you see on the surface level. So, yeah, that is great advice, Sophia.
So let me ask you this. You wanted more income,
Mhm.
but and a lot of coaches will always say, like, what's your why? And sometimes I'm like, because I want more money. Do I, uh, do I need something bigger than that? But,
Right,
you know, I do have a bigger why.
right,
And sometimes I question my why. And it's like, is
mhm,
my why big enough? Is it broad enough? Is it,
right,
and it's like, okay, stop judging your why. It's your why.
right.
Everybody gets to have their own why. So what was yours?
That's a good question. So my why initially was just to be able to supply a lifestyle or provide a lifestyle for myself and my children that I couldn't provide at the time. There were times where I had to tell my children no because I couldn't afford it, not because they didn't deserve it. And when you say having more money is your why, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's what I know that my coach has asked me is just digging deeper as to what is that going to allow you to be able to do that you're not able to do right now. And so I remember one of the young ladies in the business said, she found her mentoring coach in the business just because she saw him having lunch in the middle of the day with his children and she was at work. Simple things like that. My daughter wanting me to come on her field trips when she was younger, but as the sole provider, I couldn't take any days off. I had to pick and choose. I felt bad having to ask permission to be able to do things for my children when it came to, hey, if I have to take them to the doctor, right, or go to a field trip or whatever it may be. And so really for me, my why initially was my children. I wanted to be a better mom. Let me just say that. When I say my children, it was just I equated what I was able to do for my children as to how good of a mom that I was. And so I'll say this, a lot of people say that they will die for their kids. I'll die for my family, I'll die for my loved ones. But I believe that it's harder to live for them. It's harder to live in a moment of, hey, I'm going to protect you. That's understandable. But for you to get up and grind every day to be able to provide a better lifestyle for your children, to provide, education, right? I can now. I sent my granddaughter to private school. I didn't have that luxury when my children were, coming up. There are certain things that I've taken my granddaughter on a Disney cruise, for her 4th birthday. And, kids are like, "Who are you?" Right? And I said, "Well, I am a different I have a different I'm a different person because I'm able to do things that are differently, but I still made sure that when my children were younger, we might have not been able to take those type of trips, but I was going to do activities, take them to different things, the zoos, the science fairs. But, so my why initially, Sophia, was my children to be able to be a better mother, but it has evolved. It has definitely evolved over time as some people have because here's the thing, we have dreams, goals, and aspirations before we have children, right? When you're young, they ask you what you want to be, and you have a vision, at least even at that young age, of what you want to do. I want to be a teacher. I want to teach people. I want to be a doctor, whatever it may be. You have vision for your life prior to, you being able to multiply your family, right? Increase your family. And so I would say, I have gotten back to me now, what do I do that my kids are 25 and 23, leaving the nest, right? What do I do now? And there was a moment where I was like, well, what do I want? Now I'm back to what do I want to do? Now that the children are no longer with me, what do I want to do? What makes me happy? And so I'm still, building on that.
I love that because so many women hear the narrative that you have to have kids and you have to have do things for your kids. But a lot of like I said, a lot of the women that I work with don't have kids.
Mhm.
So then it's like, well, where do I fit into the narrative? Where do I fit into what society is asking of me? And yet they're going through that same transition
Mm.
of, because after you hit 40, 50, you go through that transition. You start questioning life and you start
Right.
asking, what do I want to do? What
Right.
are my dreams? What does the next chapter look like?
Right.
And who am I becoming? It's like I kind of have a vision of her, but what do I need to do to fully switch my identity and step into her? You
Right.
know, and sometimes also you just need to know where you want to go. The hell is not your business.
Right. And that is so true. That is so true. Man, I love that. And things change. The more things that I wanted when I was younger, when you're younger, you want more. You want to be in activity. You want to be in the midst of everything. You're looking for something to do. And now I'm more about serenity, more about peace. So life is definitely going to look different at different stages. Even children, I definitely wanted children, and I love my children. I love, love, love my children. But my daughter is one who does not want children. She says, "No, I don't want children." She wants to live her life. And I could understand that because that is a major responsibility. Of course, they make it seem as if that is what the standard woman is supposed to do is just go out here and procreate.
Right.
No, absolutely not. I believe that God gives everybody a different vision, a different path, a different journey. And so it's not to judge someone else's choices. If that is what he has laid on your heart, then absolutely go for it and be the best at it. But yeah, if that's not your goal, then I understand that and just do whatever makes you happy. Um, and it can change. It absolutely can change, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So now that you're in this transition phase,
Mhm.
do you have your new why, or are you still working on the why and just taking steps towards figuring out the big picture?
So I have a somewhat. So what it is I want to be able to. So when I first got started in the business, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to have a group home for women and children. I've had certain experiences, with helping people get reintroduced into the world, some who have experienced incarceration, and so I'm trying to really asking God to help me with that purpose, but I know that I am a person who loves to see the underdog win. And so I have to figure out how do I fit in that mold? What can I do? As far as being the representation of that, I'm doing my best to show that, hey, and this is also just being really transparent. He's taught me to be transparent and tell my story. But my why now is really to have an impact on other individuals in a positive way that's going to allow them to be able to pay that forward. And I saw something um where somebody wrote the other day, not somebody wrote, Lauren Hill, did you see her? Well, I don't know. Let me not get off topic. But she gave a speech at, I think it was the BET Awards, and she said she realized that she came from a great um household, great background where her parents were loving and nurturing. They spoke life into her. And then she's like, but I realized that everybody doesn't get that. And that was like, I mean, I know it's obviously, people have different upbringings. But once I realized that as I talk to adults now, you can see, you know, some of the trauma that they have been through, maybe the lack of love, affection of someone, just pouring into them, lifting them up, encouraging them. And so for me, it's really more so, finding those individuals, not just the underdog, but definitely the underdog, and showing them and helping them to become the best version of them and however way I fit into that mold. So I'm now trying to figure out what does that look like outside of this business.
I love that. That is
Mhm.
such an amazing way to uplift humanity. I love my vision. So
Thank you.
hopefully I can support you some way in your
Thank
vision.
you. Yes.
I mean, it's to really help people be out of situations that don't serve them and are to their detriment.
Mm,
That that is like heaven sent because people need that and
they
they
do.
need to have that love poured into them in some way, form, or fashion. And it's so easy, depending on what your upbringing is, to just always see through that lens
Mhm.
and forget. Or even the things that you know, you just say, oh, everybody knows that.
Right.
Everybody doesn't know that.
I've not. Right.
Or, everybody had that. No, everybody did not, so I think that's something that as you do personal development and you become more aware, then your lens starts to change a little bit. And you can start to see, okay, yeah, maybe what's common to me is not common to somebody else. And how can I bring that to that?
Right.
So I love it. I love that. Well, it's like the each one teach one is
Each one
you're
teach.
wanting to bring people up.
Mhm.
So I think that's an
Yeah.
amazing goal and vision to have.
Thank you. Thank you. And if I could be totally transparent, it stems from so I lost my mom when I was 19 years of age, right? And so, after that, I became a mom without my mom, I moved out of my home, got my first apartment. There's a lot of big things that have taken place without having the guidance of my mother, right? And I remember there was a point in time where I felt, I don't know if I wanna say ashamed, but there were questions that I had. So I've gravitated always a lot in my, since then to older women, older men, as far as friends, right? And relationships, because I love to learn from them. And there were so many times where I would just, like I said, I having my first apartment, I would just watch and see how people set up their apartments and how the smallest things. And there were times where I would want to ask a question, but then I thought, am I supposed to know that at 20 something years of age with two kids, And with your mom, with most people, well, not let me back that up, not all people, with some people who had a present mom, you know, um, you would be able to ask them, a auntie, a grandmother, or someone who you felt safe with, and you knew that wasn't going to be able to judge you. And so, ooh, I'm so sorry about the little fur baby if you hear that in the back, right? But and but in my case, I didn't always feel safe to be able to be vulnerable enough to say that I don't know this and I thought that I should, you know? And so just being able to let people know that it's okay. If you don't know, it's okay to ask questions. There's no judgment. And so that was something that I struggled with for a long time because I just felt like other people probably know this and you just don't know because you didn't really have anybody who was there to, help you work and navigate that thing. You kind of had to figure it out. So I am a big self-starter, a big Googler. I'm gonna go find it out. Let me go on YouTube. I will try my best to figure it out, but there's nothing wrong with leaning on someone else and their expertise to be able to help you grow as a person too, and don't feel ashamed of that.
Well, and I love that you bring out the whole aspect of shame because some
Mhm.
things that we find ourselves being ashamed of are not shameful. So, not knowing something is nothing to be ashamed of, like he said.
Right.
But you also said something else that was really important, is that feeling of safety. And some people equate safety to physical danger, but there's emotional safety. And if you're with someone and your nervous system is calm around that person, that is safety.
Absolutely.
If you're around someone, they're not doing anything to you, but those little hairs on the back of your neck are standing out, you do not
Mhm.
feel safe. And it's probably time to exit stage left.
Right.
uh, you know? So you want to be around people who you can exhale,
Mhm.
can take that moment to be open and vulnerable with them.
Right.
So it
Right.
sounds like that's the kind of space that you want to create for others.
Absolutely, absolutely, and, I had, because I have had and you never know why well, God will put you through these situations because I met a young lady that we're sisters, God gave us to each other, and I met her at the age of 15 and, through, extended family, and I remember her just cleaving to me. Now here I am young and trying to figure it out with 2 kids, but she's looking up to me. Hey, I see you get up every day, you go to work, you come, you take care of your kids. And, there were certain things that she would ask me about. And even now she goes, I'm so happy for my big sister, and because she didn't have her family. At one point she was in like a group home, lost her mom at a young age as well. And, just had a different life. And so those type of things are what really show me that, what, there are individuals who have not had the best situations coming up, but they need individuals who are willing to operate with love and not judgment. And so, yeah, feeling safe was a big thing for me because I didn't always feel safe around people. You know, I didn't always feel protected, I didn't always feel like if I shared something that it was not going to be used against me or thrown back in my face or, what have you. So just being able to create those environments where individuals can feel safe and can know that, hey, no matter what you do, you're loved, you're going to be protected, you're going to be poured into. And sometimes just identifying it even before someone even asks, just getting better at that too, because I was not big on asking. And one thing that God did was He sent people into my life that would just see me struggling. I remember I was in taking my kids to daycare and I was, I used to always try to rush to get them at a certain time, but I had to go to two separate places because I put one child in a home environment because she was younger and one in a more school setting, and so I used to always have to take the bus. I worked in retail at Home Depot at the time, and sometimes even getting them to release me from my station took a while. And I would get to the school sometimes late, and they would give me a hard time, and I just would tell them, I'm sorry, I'm running late. We can call the and these ladies would say, "We can call the authorities," basically saying that you as if you abandoned your children. I don't think they were just trying to scare me to come. And I said, "Okay," and I remember one day, this young lady, Miss Preston, she said, put me on. She was a teacher there, a newer teacher assistant, and she came to me and she said, "I see you every day. I see you with your kids. Your kids are well groomed. I see you going to work, coming back. I see you trying." And she said, "Put me on that list." She said, "Put me on the pickup list. If you're ever running late," she says, "I just live down here. I will pick the kids up and I will take them to the home." And she said, "I take care of my grandkids." And at first I was a little nervous, very protective of my kids. And she took me to her home, showed me she actually, took on her own grandkids, and I remember I put her on the list, and I remember her coming to me like, probably a week or so, or a few days after that, and she said that some of the teachers were asking her, like, "Why would you put yourself on the list? What if one day she never comes back for these kids and you have them?" And she said, "Then I guess I'll have them till they're 18." And I was like, "Wow," there is and that is so unusual that you find in this world. So for her to be like the needle in the haystack, I just wanted to be more of that. So I have so many stories of just, individuals who just saw me in that moment. And, I'm walking my kids one time in a stroller to daycare, and we were walking, and I used to have my daughter in the stroller, and I would put my son who was older on the top and rig it up and walk. And I remember a lady pulling up to me and she said, "Can I give you a ride?" And I said, "Oh, no, thank you. I do this every day. No, thank you." Older lady, like, so she said, "Honestly," she said, "Please, I don't," and I said, I have too many places to go. Cause like I said, I dropped them off at different places. And she said, "I don't care where you have to go. Anywhere that you want to go, I'll take you." She said, "Please allow me to give this back to you." She said, "Because I used to be you." And she's like, "Sometimes if it was just one day that somebody could just take the weight off of me and give me a ride, then that would be fine wherever you want to go." And, I was a little nervous because once again, you don't know, but she's an elderly lady. And I said, "Okay." And she just took me where I wanted to go, ministered me and said, "If this can bless your day." And those small things stood out to me in my life. A ride, people like, "Oh, a ride?" Yeah, but you don't know I needed that ride. That was just one day where you just let me sit down and relax. And I didn't have many of those days, growing up and or raising my children. So yeah.
Well, and I love that the business is putting you in position to be able to realize that dream. Because without being the dedicated entrepreneur that you are, you wouldn't be having the success that you currently have. And then being able to take that and move it and basically pay it forward. So this this to me is just kind of the perfect balance between the travel and transformation because we're able to see you. Well, okay, if you're following her, you'll be able to see her travel because she posts a lot of pictures. Uh, but the transformation, the personal transformation that you had to go through to be where you are today, 10 years later,
Mhm.
then to have the vision of who you're becoming, that business and your tenacity are all what this entire podcast is about.
Right.
Travel and transformation, because transformation can come through travel. It's
Yes.
really about personal transformation, and that can happen anywhere at any time. And it can just be an inspiration or the words that somebody spoke or somebody's story that touched you. So thank you so much for being here. I
Thank
really appreciate you. I love what you're up to now, and I love what your vision is for the future.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So, okay, what is your go ahead and give us your Facebook in case somebody wants to visit.
Okay. So my Facebook is my full name, Marwu, Cienia, Cienia, Railey, Railey.
Okay, so you guys, I'll also make sure it's in the show notes if you want to follow her. Please do. And I will ask you to go ahead and follow me as well. So you've been listening along. You know that I have two Instagram accounts, and I'd like you to follow them both. So the one where you'll get most of your coaching and that type of thing is Create Life Your Way, because I think everybody in life should be able to create their own life and live their own dreams and step into their own futures instead of somebody else's. And then the other one is Sophia underscore I underscore got underscore IG. I know, ton of underscores. And if you listen to a couple of the podcasts back, you'll know the little backstory on that. I was on the photo trip, and the people were like, "Oh, we're all gonna post to IG. What's your IG?" I was like, "I don't have an IG." And then, of course, got mocked, and it's like, "How do you not have an IG?" And this is like back when Meta didn't own everything, and it really
Right.
was Instagram. And so that night, my friend is driving me home, and that was what I created. Sophia, I got IG. It was almost like, now leave me alone. And then I'm on Facebook at Sophia E. And all of them, you will see a picture of me. So if you're watching, you can't miss it. So thank you again. I really appreciate you being here. And I know that the audience has gotten a lot from you today, and I just appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate you for creating a platform like this where individuals can get poured into. And so thank you. And thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome.